of Genesis.
Yes.
It's not.
Genesis has 125 chapters. Every time.
I want to say 50 of mine. I must have got the short change.
Yeah. Every time we finish a Bible study, I think this got to be close to the end, and then I see we're not. So we're in chapter 40.
Yes,
Now,
chapter 40.
Now we're going to find a little bit of overlapping here because chapter 39 was the Yahwist and the Yahwist story. Now, when we get into chapter 40, we're going to read the Elohist interpretation of things. And I'll point out as we go through that some of the things that stand out. But we're at between 39 and 40, whoever combined these had to really struggle to kind of help them flow evenly. Now, the first verse of chapter 40 is Yahwist. But starting with verse 2, we get into the Elohist.
Now, again, the difference between those two is...
The Yahwist was northern kingdom. The Elohist was southern kingdom. The Yahwist, we're going to find more imagery. Like we get to Exodus, they followed the pillar of fire and smoke. That kind of imagery was big for the Yahwist. The Elohist was really more low-keyed. In fact, the Elohist, the image, I think to keep in mind, is the tent of meeting. They didn't have a temple in mind or the ark in mind. For them, God was wherever they pitched their tent. And for the Yahwist, there was that sacred ground kind of thing. So, all right.
Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why are your faces so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me your kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," said Joseph. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh."
I don't think people are going to this kid to have them interpret dreams.
Now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him.
Okay.
Better to be a keeper of the vineyard type stuff than the baker.
Yes. The butler was in better shape. Interesting story. Now, the significance here, this interpreting of dreams. Where does Joseph say the message of dreams comes from? God. So he's right off the bat taking himself out of harm's way. He said, well, no, this is what God said. The other thing that stands out is how many days? 3. That number 3 pops up continually in Scripture. The significance of 3 is it's a triangle. You level a chair with 3 points. The early philosophers believed that the triangle was the purest symbol. And it carried on into Christianity. I've seen a lot of triangle, Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that balance out. We see that mostly on Trinity Sunday, the Sunday on which no priest wants to have to preach. But it's interesting that 3 was good for the butler, but it wasn't so good for the baker. Now, the butler is also called the cupbearer. You know the significance to that?
Yeah, it's when you got back in old days, when you got up there being the leader, then there were people that wanted to kill you. They tried to poison your food or and stuff.
He would be a taster.
Yes. He was the guy that, when they know they had something that was good, he kept anybody from putting some poison in there. So he's the butler, but he's referred to oftentimes as the cupbearer.
Well, the other thing about 3 days is that's how long Jesus was in the grave.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's... we just have to think back a few days. But how many times did Peter deny the Lord?
3 times.
Isn't there a cupbearer in when Joseph's brother sold him? They put a cup in there for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In the green.
Yeah.
When his brothers came to get grain,
Yeah.
he put his cup in Benjamin's sack, and then he sent his servant after them and accused them of stealing his cup,
Yeah.
and that brought him back, and then he made up with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's down the road a little bit,
Oh, yes.
because Joseph,
Next chapter.
Joseph was, as it said here, that yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, let's take a look at now. 41 is still Hellenistic writings.
And it's long. It covers
Yes.
2.5 pages in my Bible.
Yes. Okay, Barbara, let her read.
When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the river bank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings." Pharaoh was once again angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was hanged. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "but God will give Pharaoh the answers he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. Then I woke up."
Okay, let's pause there for just a minute. The message, I kind of like the way it covers that little bit. Said, when the head cupbearer then spoke up and said to Pharaoh, "Oh, I just now remembered something. I'm sorry. I should have told you this long ago. Once when Pharaoh got angry with his servants, he locked me and the head baker in the house of the captain." So, he gives him a little background on that. And he says, as it turned out, just as he interpreted, I was returned to my position, and the head baker was impaled. So it wasn't hung, he was stabbed maybe. Whatever it was, he was dead.
Why are we having the story of the cows twice in this short period of time? With that in the land. What am I supposed to learn from that? It's better to be fat.
Pharaoh had the dream, and now he's telling the dream to Joseph to get the interpretation.
We only hear the story once about the cows. And then he talks about the wheat. So, but 7, again,
Yeah,
that becomes another sacred number.
7 is the number of perfection.
7 was also the number of known civilizations.
And it was a number of days of the week.
Yes.
But who decided that? That's kind of arbitrary. It could have been a 10-day week. I mean,
They tried a 10-day week in France in the Revolution. It didn't work.
Yeah. And speaking of the revolution, in verse 15, Pharaoh said, "I dreamed a dream." Lamiz.
They all kind of run together.
Yeah.
It's kind of bold of this cupbearer to say Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, like to remind Pharaoh that he was angry once before.
Yeah.
That was kind of bold. I don't know if I would have brought that up.
You kind of like him to forget that. And then, it has these skinny, ugly cows ate up the first 7 healthy cows. But you couldn't tell by looking. After eating them, they were just as skinny and ugly as before.
So when the cattle become meat eaters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So then in the second dream, I saw 7 ears of grain, full-bodied and lush, growing out of a single stalk. And right behind them, 7 other ears, shriveled thin and dried out by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the full ears. I've told all this to the magicians, but they can't figure it out. So, in some ways, it's kind of saying the meek can overcome the mighty. You know, the skinny cows came out and they were able to overtake the strong, good-looking cows.
But they were still ugly.
They were still ugly. Just because you conquer someone doesn't make you beautiful. So let's see what the dreams.
I forgot what verse I stopped.
25, I think.
Okay. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow. Then all the abundance of Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance of the land will not be remembered because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now, let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you."
Okay, let's pause there for just a minute. I like the message when it says, "This seemed like a good idea, Pharaoh." Then Pharaoh said to his officials, "Isn't this the man we need? Are we going to find anyone else who has God's Spirit in him like this?" Now remember, for the Pharaoh, who was God? The Pharaoh was.
Mm-hmm.
The Pharaoh held themselves out as being divine. And so the Pharaoh is now saying, he's recognizing that this Joseph has a connection with the God who's a little bit more powerful than me. And so he's willing to give to Joseph a lot of authority. And in that authority, he says, "From now on, you're in charge of my affairs. All of my people will report to you. Only as king will I be over you." So he still has the right of first refusal, I guess you might say. But he's giving to Joseph an awful lot of power. Excuse me.
I have a footnote that says, Joseph, for verses 40 and 41, Joseph is made the vizier to govern all the people of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. A document from the tomb of Rekhmiri in a late Bronze Age tells of the duties of the vizier in Egypt. He is the, quote, grand steward of all Egypt, unquote, and all activities of state are under his control.
Yeah. He's running the whole show. I guess you might say he's the Elon of Egypt.
Well, to me, it reminds me of, what can I say? Oh, when he was in Potiphar's house, he was put in charge of everything,
Mhm.
except for Potiphar and his wife.
Yeah.
Now he's put in charge of everything except the Pharaoh.
Well, when he was in prison,
Yeah,
he was
in charge of
in
everything.
charge of everything. So, I mean, apparently this kid had a real good head on his shoulders. I mean, he was sharp, and he knew he shouldn't upset the people who would have some authority over him. I mean, if the guard, the guy who ran the prison, said, you know, Joseph, you take care of this for me, bingo. I mean, that reminds me of a story. I hate to go sidetrack, but I had a good friend in college. This was during the Vietnam War, and nobody knew what they were going to end up doing. And Bob decided, since we graduated from college, and he was not married, he was subject to being drafted. So he went down and signed up for the Air Force. And he went through Officers Candidate School, and they sent him to South Dakota, to the SAC base
Wow.
in South Dakota. And he was in charge of maintenance for one SAC plane. Each SAC plane had their own maintenance crew. And Bob said when he got there, the sergeant came into his office, you know, saluted and all that. And the sergeant said, "What do you know about taking care of an airplane, mechanics?" And Bob said, "Not a thing." And the sergeant said, "Sir, if you stay out of the way, I will make sure that this crew is given awards on a regular basis." So your predecessor thought he knew how to do it, and he was telling us how to do it, and it just kept screwing everything up. And Bob said, "I'll tell you what, I'll bring donuts every day." And they got commendation after commendation after commendation. You know, this sergeant was kind of like Joseph. I mean, Bob was in charge. I mean, he was a captain or whatever rank he was. He outranked everybody on his team. But he said to the sergeant, "I don't know what I'm doing. You take care of it." That's kind of the same thing that's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pharaoh's in charge. But Pharaoh doesn't know how to handle all this stuff. So he says, "Seems like a good idea." He says to his officials, "Isn't this the man we need?"
It gets me, it seems like Joseph was being awfully forward to offer that plan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was probably risking something,
Well,
because if Pharaoh, didn't like it, he could have sent him back to prison. Or
but
worse.
he knew the prophecies,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew the God. See, that was the other thing that for Pharaoh it was important. Obviously, the dreams come from God. If this man can interpret God's dreams, then he has a direct line to God.
Mm-hmm.
Forget Pharaoh is God. He's got a direct line with a powerful God. And so he says, "Hey, isn't this the man we need? Are we going to find anyone else who has God's spirit in him like this?" So, Pharaoh does say, this guy's got God's spirit. He can interpret these dreams. So Pharaoh couldn't interpret them. And remember, Pharaoh had already brought in
All these magicians.
all the magicians and seers and everything. And they just said, we don't know what it means. It means don't keep your cattle in the river. So, okay, let's continue on.
Where are you, Kathy?
Yeah, where are we at?
That's Barbara.
Is it-
41.
41?
Verse 41.
41. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and men shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your... Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift a hand or foot in all Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name of Zephanath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt.
Okay, let's pause there for just a minute
He
because
was 17 when he went to Egypt. Now he's 30, so he was 13 years
in prison,
and
yeah.
working for Potiphar.
Now, Pharaoh gave Joseph an Egyptian name. He also gave him an Egyptian wife. And he also outfitted him in the best robes of linen, put a gold chain around his neck, and he slipped a ring on Joseph's hand. The ring is a sign of authority. Do we see that happening anywhere else?
In the Roman Church.
With a Pope.
The Roman Church, the Episcopal Church, maybe even the Lutheran Church, I don't know. The bishop is given a ring. The Pope is given a ring. You know, when the Pope dies, the concierge, or whatever that Italian word is, as the guy who helps out the Pope, he takes the ring off the finger, takes a hammer, and smashes the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Because it shows that authority no longer exists. When the new Pope is consecrated, he is given a new ring. Our bishops all have what we call the bishop's ring. And a lot of times, depending upon how church they are, when you're ordained, you get a certificate of ordination. The bishop takes off his ring, drips wax on it, and puts a seal on it. In fact, if you look at the certificates for bishops, all the bishops who were at the consecration put their ring in wax. Now, my ordination does not have that because the bishop back in Michigan was very low church. And I am or was also, so it was for me not a biggie. He signed it. That's all I need. But
I remember when we were kids. Do you remember this, Sharon? We had wax that would melt, and then we had a wet ring. We dipped in that, and we had our own signet.
Yeah. So there is a significance to rings, and the same thing is true with royalty. The king can use the wax seal, and don't do it this way. They take the ring off, but that is the symbol of authority. And I wear a ring that's got a cross on it. I just like the ring, and I was shopping somewhere, and they said, "You're a minister," and I said, "How'd you know?" Your ring. That they identified. Now, for all I know, that person may have been Roman Catholic. I don't know, but so that all those symbols, we don't see that kind of symbolism with the Yahwist. But the Yahwist is giving these symbols that show authority. And I will say, Joseph moved up in the chain of command very quickly. Okay.
But successful managers in any business or whatever surround themselves by people that are better than they are
Yes.
at the various things that they have in charge of.
Yes.
And you get, apparently the guy before your friend in South Dakota was one that thought he was in charge.
Yes.
And not surrounded, and they were, those type are successful.
Yeah.
Managers are,
The guys who actually fixed the planes were being told how to fix the planes
and they,
by a guy who didn't know how to fix the planes.
Yeah. Mhm.
And when Bob got there, he said, "You take care of it.
recognizing the talents of people that are around you.
Yeah, I'll bring the donuts." So every day he'd show up with a dozen donuts, and the guys would have donuts. But he said, I'd sit in the office and read the paper, read a book, and he said, show up for meetings. And he said, these guys were really great.
And probably his approach with his people was, what can I do to help you to make your,
Yeah,
you know, what do you need that
yeah. What do you need? I
need to
can.
get for you.
Yeah.
Do your,
And he did have a guy in his crew, as I understand it. You know, a lot of times there's always somebody who knows how to finagle something.
oh yeah.
And, you know, they always show them in prison of war camps. They know how to. And Bob said he had a guy working there, and he said, if they needed something, they'd send this guy out. And he said, I don't know how he got it. I don't want to know how he got it. I can claim complete innocence. Yes.
Ignorance.
And he said, but he would get what he needed. So, okay, let's. This is really interesting because now this guy has risen from prisoner to second in command, and he rode in a. I thought it kind of interesting when he says he put him the second in command chariot at his disposal. That's like
Number 2 on it, or
that's like Air Force Two. When the vice president travels, they travel in Air Force Two. Okay, you're down at 47.
During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh, and he said, "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The second son he named Ephraim, and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe in all the world.
Okay,
So were those the first grain elevators?
that's what I say.
Exactly.
Well, silos anyway.
Yeah.
And then the excess they just put out on the next to the elevator and tarped it.
Come on.
Like they do now.
Yeah. Okay, let's go right into 42.
When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" That makes me laugh. He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die." Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others, because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain, for the famine was in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the one who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, They bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies." "No," he said to them, "you have come to see where our land is unprotected." But they replied, "Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man, who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph said to them, "It is just as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison, so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If you are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them all in custody for 3 days.
Okay, stop there for just a minute. How long did he put him in custody? 3 days. Boy, that 3 is a very important number. It's interesting. Dad kept Benjamin.
Yeah.
He didn't care what happened to the other 10, but he was going to keep Benjamin, who is now the youngest.
He was Joseph's brother, and he was born of Rachel like Joseph was.
Right.
Excuse me.
It makes me laugh that the brothers were all befuddled. They
Yeah.
didn't know how to solve problems. Maybe Joseph was a problem solver when he was little, and that's why they didn't like him. I don't know. Because I'm an oldest child, and I'm always befuddled about what to do. So I'm in awe of younger siblings who can quickly solve problems.
Yeah. I want to go back. I think when we were reading that part about Joseph getting the ring and everything, that was actually a Yahwist addition to the story. Again, for the Yahwist, symbolism was important. And so when they put on the ring, the gold chain, and all the garments, that would not be important for an Elohist. You know, the southern kingdom just wasn't into that. But the northern kingdom was, all the fancy stuff. That's why we say that the Yahwist is kind of like Roman Catholics, and the Elohists are like Protestants. If you look at the Yahwist, we'll see this at the funeral for the Pope. I don't know who makes vestments for the Vatican, but those chasubles that they wear are not cheap.
No.
A chasuble over here can cost anywhere from $350 to $650. And these guys all have one. They're all the same. And I think 2 things. One, where do they put them? Because you just can't throw them in a corner. And 2, how do they pay for that kind of stuff? I mean, it really is, it's amazing. But that kind of symbolism is important for the Yahwists. If you look at, the Methodists, the minister would wear a suit and tie, or maybe a preaching gown. But if you look at Roman Catholics, they still wearing a chasuble and that. Although I have to admit, on Sunday, Pastor Lisa did wear a chasuble, and they wear them here on a regular basis. I think yes, the last time I think it was on my 50th anniversary, I did the sacrament, and I said, put the chasuble up. I just don't wear them. That's because I'm more of an Elohist than a Yahwist. So Anyway, I just want to go back and kind of clarify that because that's kind of important. So, you're going to go start a fire somewhere?
Just a small one.
The lights might go out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but continue on.
That's okay.
That was interesting.
Where was I?
Repeat
Oh, on 18.
18, yeah.
Oh, 41?
Yes,
Yes.
42.
18 and 42.
1842.
Okay.
The day Columbus discovered America.
Yeah.
He put them in custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified and that you may not die." This they proceeded to do. They said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come upon us." Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then turned back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. At the place where they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, and he saw his silver in the mouth of his sack. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other trembling and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father, Jacob, in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. They said, "The man who is Lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men, we are not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan.' Then the man who is Lord over the land said to us, 'This is how I will know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for your starving households and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, so I will know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver. When they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, 'You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me.' Then Reuben said to his father, 'You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back.' But Jacob said, 'My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow.'"
Okay.
We got we got Elois and Yahweh, because first it's one guy finds his money in his sack while they're traveling,
Right.
then later they all find their money when they get home.
When they're unpacking. So they're trying to weave, whoever was the author of this, trying to weave different stories together. Not an easy thing to do. I like the message says at the end, if something bad happens to him on the road, you'll put my gray, sorrowing head in the grave. Mm-hmm. So, at least at that point, he wasn't bald. Okay, we'll do chapter 43. Slowly we plod ahead.